public. Mr. Epstein,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Smith, welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Haste,
Hello.
welcome. Any other members of the public here?
What is Miss Smith's first name?
Patty?
Patty Smith?
It's not the Patty Smith. It's the Patty Smith.
Well, you don't know. I could have good plastic surgery.
It'd be really good place.
It'd be really good.
She was not photogenic.
In your packets are the minutes from the IDA meeting of October 21, that were sent out ahead of time for review. I think they're a fair reflection of that meeting. Go back a second and let the record show that Ms. Snells is not present.
And Mr. Chair, does the public have is there anybody who wants to comment?
Yeah, I think this would be the proper time. Yeah, I would like to comment. Let me ask you this, is it okay to pull up here or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully the Chick-fil-A stuff won't get in the way. I love their hiring practices. Eric Epstein from Rock the Capitol, and I have a couple comments. I don't know, I'm assuming there'll be latitude, 5 minutes seem reasonable, Mark?
As long as you want.
For the chair.
As long as I want.
Within 5 minutes.
Talk about the last Eagles game. But I don't know if this is appropriate or not. I guess just the question is, it's unusual for me to go to a public meeting where there's not a pledge of allegiance. I don't know if that's not part of the protocol because there's not a flag or whatever. So that's more of a rhetorical question. Also want to let you know that we're taping. We tape every meeting and you can check it out on the website. We don't edit the taping, so it's just raw footage. Kind of like PCN on steroids, but only more interesting. So we went through your website and gone through a lot of the county websites, and there's some really good things there, and there's a number of weaknesses, which I'll point out in a moment. But I've been kind of on a tour reminding people that Senate Bill, let me just give you this. Is it okay to hand stuff out, Mark?
If the chair is okay with it, sure.
No, I know where the power is, brother. No offense, man. So Senate Bill 554, I don't know if you're aware of it, became law on August 30th, and there's been numerous and frequent violations. And I think a lot of times it's because folks aren't aware of Senate Bill 554. So that's new revisions to the Sunshine Act. And, you know, Matt, I'm sure somebody who's in and around the Capitol, you're aware of it. The things that I've wanted to point out before is that, and you probably do this, your public postings. Let me just say what's different now is that you can't really modify the agenda without a justification. And a lot of folks don't know that, and I think unknowingly run into trouble. The other issue that I think is paramount is prior to a vote, the public is now allowed to comment. In most municipalities or political subdivisions used to have a public comment at the beginning or the end, but not actually on the item itself. So that's happened actually a lot. Now, a lot of this stuff is curable, and if you read, I have a little memo there for you. It'll only take you about a minute or two. This is kind of like based on lessons learned. The reason I'm going out of my way to bring it to people's attention is that the board is not indemnified for some of these transgressions. And that's new because most people have VOD and they think you're okay. So this is just a cautionary tale that in the event you have to amend the item, there are exceptions. There's 3 of them, pretty clear cut. Mark can handle that. Also, in the event that the public does show up and you're voting on an item, they are entitled to comment on that item. So I don't know what your protocol is here. Apparently it's like you comment at the beginning of the meeting, perhaps, at the end of the meeting, but that's not the opportunity to comment on an item. The other thing, and I've talked to Mark about this, and we're really just wanted to introduce ourselves because I'm only here for 2 issues, is we went through the website, and this is on the memo, and I don't know how familiar you are with your own bylaws, and I'm not saying that to be snarly, but most of the bylaws and amendments you have posted have a lot of absent signatures, which is not unusual. I don't know if you want to clean that up. A lot of them are not notarized. A lot of them don't even have the Department of State's imprimatur on them. So my assumption is you probably have a set of all this and it just hasn't been codified or published. But for somebody like me, when you see that, it just raises issues, especially since you elongated the term of your lifespan. What was initially contemplated was 50 years, I think you're up to like 2067 now. So if you look through the genesis, and we read all of this, because I have nothing better to do. I thought the Eagle season was over, but now I don't know. You'll see that there's been really some substantive changes made and a lot of signatures missing. So you can take it for what it is or what it isn't. Also notice that the website, I don't know who monitors that. There's a lot of empty space under archives. I don't know if it's because I had a mechanical change, but if you're posting an archive, there's no meetings minutes. There's no special meeting minutes. According to your bylaws, you can have a special meeting without public announcement. I'd encourage you to change that. I don't think that's a good idea to be able to convene a meeting without public announcement. So as we're going through this, there is no way for anybody to look at your annual meetings, your special meetings, your financials, your contracts. It's really bare bones. If you go to your website, there's no biography of the board members, no conflict of interest forms. I'm just giving you a heads up that I'll be filing right to know requests on all that. I'm not really sure who your point person is, George, if it's you or Brooke. But what I'm saying is a lot of money flows through this and there's no financials. I'm not saying there's anything untoward. And what brought my attention to this is the solar farm project, which I was one of the folks that bid on. And you may want to look back at that because I looked at our numbers from 2010 based on what was projected to be spent. And we're looking at what you spent now, it's way out of whack. Now, you know, you have the opportunity to choose whoever you want to choose. My business was Green Connection, and as a for-profit, this is a subsidiary of a nonprofit, there was a lot of benefit if you had chosen to go with us. You chose to go another way because you wanted to retain ownership. That being said, the funding was based on gaming funds, CFAA funding, and us lending you money. And as I'm looking at the numbers, I'm gonna ask for your numbers on the solar farm. Because based on what I've been able to cobble together, they're nowhere near what would have been in place had we won the bid. We're not interested in doing the bid. We spent $17,000 in staff, so that's never gonna happen. But solar is a peculiar business. Right now, you should be in a good place based on policy. So that kind of a recap. The solar part is part of my deal as I'm the president of the board of Green Connections. So I'm just tracking that as I would any PRI, program related investment. The other stuff I think aren't really difficult lifts. You know, the minutes are a little behind, things of that nature, but somebody may want to look at the verbiage because as you go through these amendments, they want to codify the document. It's to be a little more straightforward. That's really all I have. I mean, to be honest with you, the most difficult part of right to know, and I'll be upfront, are your contracts that you have with vendors, and then the contracts that we look at closely that you may have in terms of service agreements. What we've noticed over time, and again, this is not to assess blame, but in education especially, a lot of times you'll have hardware, then you'll have software, and then you actually have a software service agreement that exceeds the length of your software, which makes no sense because your software has a shelf life of a fruit fly. So we're at the Turnpike, we're at FIA, we're at the LCB. Whether or not you like us doesn't matter, but we're also interested in helping. We've learned a lot. In fact, I'll end with this. One of the things we learned at the Turnpike, which nobody else has, I wish there was a lessons learned, is that their service agreements for software are 1 year. They make you reapply, and they actually, to be honest, final thing is most of these contracts usually don't have metrics. That includes the county when we looked at those contracts. So as a business person moving forward, happy to, ask if you're willing to meet with us, willing to do it, but we learned some neat things from LCB, and also FIA has actually done some stuff since an awful beginning of the 2000s. They've really improved and have done some really great stuff. So happy to partner with you, but we'll be here regularly. We'll tape the meetings and we'll post the meetings, and then based on what I saw, Mr. Libhart, I think, is the point of contact for Right to Know. Does that sound correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I'll stay around afterwards if you have any questions, but it's really good to see everybody here today. You all look very handsome and attractive, although that's probably not a lot.
It is, but
Yeah.
thank you, Eric,
Yeah.
for that. It's good to see you back here after an extended absence. Were there any questions for Mr. Epstein?
I'm curious, so, Mr. Epstein, you talked about you were representing Rock the Capital,
Mhm.
is that right? And then Green Connections?
Green Connections, so, I don't know, when we had deregulation in the late nineties, I was one of the negotiators for the PPL settlement, which is valued at about 2.86 billion. They created sustainable energy funds for each incumbent utility. So I became part of the Sustainable Energy Fund. We were the only one that created a for-profit subsidiary. Our philosophy, mine was that we shouldn't be dependent on subsidies, and if green energy can't sell at the market, it shouldn't sell. So we took ourselves out of the rate base. So that project that I'm talking about was one of our first projects, as we were gonna make money. We're doing fine. I mean, don't misunderstand me. It's one of the first projects where we were going to use the money, funnel it back, and justify being out of the rate base. It's very rare that somebody takes them out, themselves off a tariff. Actually, I don't remember the last time it happened. So when we put the bid in, the bid was extremely competitive. We would have managed, operated it, lent you money. What I had my people do is a lessons learned, so we don't repeat it. You may wanna look at that, because I think this was probably an issue over the RECs, and people had inflated their value, really inflated their value, but, left a bad feeling on our staff. Now, to be honest with you, we still do business with the county, but.
I guess I'm curious, so you talked about like looking at, looking at what FIA does and what the,
Mhm.
what the Liquor Control Board does, so as Rock the Capital, do you audit
Yeah.
there? Okay,
Not
that's who
as
does
Green
the audit,
Connection.
okay.
Yeah.
I just
So
wanted to
what
make
we
sure.
focus on are the ABCs, authorities, boards and commissions,
Gotcha.
places nobody wants to go to. Usually not warmly welcome, but over time, to be honest with you, we've learned a lot, tried to share it with folks. It's just about open government and transparency. A lot of the stuff you have is just normal on the website, easily repairable.
And so you like provide a third party audit of like right to know and all, like without us asking and then give feedback? Is that
No.
how I understand this?
So we do a right to know request, depending on how you respond, I have the option to appeal.
Okay,
Or based on the right to know, law, you have, usually, like 90% of the entities just pick up the phone and say, what are you looking at, whether it's the Senate or FEA or LCB. We don't have it, and I don't want you to spend all day looking for a non-existent document.
gotcha.
No, but let me clarify, or ask you to clarify.
Yeah.
Your comments on right to know.
Right.
And in terms of following the right to know, I appreciate.
Right.
Because I think it's important that everybody understands that, governmentally. So as my term, watchdog.
Right.
What you're doing, I think, is helpful to boards and committees that you go in front of. Your comments on the solar farm.
Right.
You kind of like, it was a crossover, because that's, your comments
Separate.
as Green Connections.
Right.
Has nothing to do with your
No.
comments on right.
Maybe,
to know.
and that
I just
was
wanna make
maybe-
sure that.
That's what I was
yeah.
making sure, I was trying to draw the connection, cause
Yeah.
No, and I
have the same
apologize, and I can
website.
send everybody.
I was curious.
Green Connections is complicated, and I can send you something, Matt, you're right, if you conflated them, there's no relationship at all.
Okay, that's what, I was trying to put it all together and that's.
No,
what I
actually, the
was
people on that board are very nice.
On the Green Connections board? or
Yeah,
no?
very
Okay.
professional, very nice.
And we're
Actually-
not, we're not.
No, I was referring to my board.
Any other questions for Eric? Okay,
I hope that helped.
thanks for
No,
being
I'm
here.
helpful,
Yeah,
thank you.
there you
Anything else?
No, thank
Now
you.
that you're less angry?
Yeah, way less angry, I like that.
We'll look at the website, Mr. Chairman, but as far as I'm concerned, I think everything's up to date in order.
Well, I think some of the questions that you raised about the documents there and whether they need to be notarized or not, might be something that we take a look at, or at least, get a little more feedback.
That-
It may or may not
I have
be
no idea what he's
relevant.
talking about.
Yeah, I can mark if you want, I can have a sidebar, but as you go through your documents, they're mostly drafts, they're not the final, I don't think it's fatal. George, where I would disagree with you is when you have a meeting and refer to the minutes, and there's no supplemental information, there's no financials.
Oh, it's on
Yeah, I couldn't find,
there. You probably didn't look at it right
that happens a lot with me, George.
there. We can check it, I mean.
Yeah, or just send me the links and I can look into it.
So now, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes of October 21, 2021 meeting of the Industrial Development Authority.
Okay.
Moved by Ms. Wilsbach,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Coherick. Any discussion? Any public discussion? Thank you for pointing that out. Well, there's,
I disagree with his legal analysis, just so you know, I don't know.
well, he's not a lawyer, so that I know.
I don't know a
Yeah.
single person, association that has opined that, public comment has to be offered before every action that is taken.
I didn't say that, I said before every vote.
I don't think it has to be offered.
It doesn't have to,
before every
well,
vote.
I strongly
You can
disagree.
comment at the beginning, if you comment at the beginning of the meeting, you've had your opportunity to comment on the items on the agenda.
No, I would ask you to look into that.
I will be happy to, but that is my advice to you
Okay.
as your solicitor.
So we have a motion and a second. Any board comments? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Now, in your packets before you are the financials from the October 21st. I'm sorry, financials ended October 31, 2021. And I'll look for a motion to accept the financials. Pending audit.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Coherick, seconded by Mr. Schofield. Any discussion from members? I know Autumn's not here today. Unfortunately, I think we should have stated that she had an exposure, fortunately. I know Eric, you and I had discussed, and George, in terms of financials or questions that Autumn would be here. I know Brooke can answer some of the questions, but I know Autumn is much more
She's
interested.
available by phone.
Okay, okay. But I think that, you know, the financials, as I've seen them and discussed with Autumn, again, pretty standard as for our IDA meetings. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the financials pending audit signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed likewise? Ayes have it, and the financials are accepted. Solicitors report and action items.
Mr. Chairman, I'll reserve any comments I have for the items under new and old business.
Excellent, thank you. So, new business. The, new business item, the PennDOT 83 project tree removal. We don't have anybody from PPL here.
We do not. Basically, PPL contacted me. They sent the photos of the trees. They wanna remove, I think it's 9 trees right on Cameron Street, because the line needs to be relocated, the PPL power line. I told PPL I wanted to, you know, discuss this with the board. I mean, they're beautiful trees, and I hate to, see them take them down if they don't need to.
So I talked to Alice, or from the PPL representative, about a separate work-related issue. She brought this up to me. I mean, so it is necessary for the I-83, you know, redo. She said to me, like, they could just trim the trees, but the trees aren't gonna look good. Like, so her point to me was like, you guys already approved me trimming them, but after I talked to my construction team, you're just not even gonna be happy with the way they look when they're trimmed, and it's gonna look worse than if we removed them and planted something else. And so her point was like, I don't wanna go forward with this approval and then you guys be unhappy afterwards, which is, I thought, more due diligence than other utilities could give you in this information, considering they have authority to trim them and it to look poorly. So I think, you know, my input is if we could ask for more mature trees to get planted that are, you know, it's this limbs landscaping strip, so I think to Mr. Steck's point, like, I think they need to be appropriate for that space.
Yeah, I mean, is there any ordinance regarding trees in that small of a space?
I mean, typically like 3 feet is what we look at as being like the smallest, and then, you know, if you only have a 3-foot tree,
Right.
It's not a very big tree.
So they're gonna top them?
No, 3 foot wide.
No, I understand, but I'm saying, when she said they're gonna trim them, they're gonna take the tops off?
I think it,
Probably.
like a very
But
large
she didn't
portion of the
discuss
side
that.
of them.
Well, if you look at like picture number 3 here, with
Yeah.
She said completely.
the door number, if you follow the pole sign, it looks like the pole is gonna be right in line with that tree.
Right.
Until you
Right.
trim that tree,
Right.
there is nothing
Nothing
left
left.
of it.
And
Right,
that
you're
was
gonna
the-
have half a tree, it's pointless.
Yeah, I think after talking with Rose, you know, she was here last week, or last month, and she said, and we authorized her to trim them. And when she went back and talked to the, you know, the actual people doing the construction, like, trimming was gonna be
Back here,
like a very aggressive form of trimming. It was just,
it's not just a shaping.
right, exactly, so,
It's not a pruning.
right, it was gonna be,
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is that we're still waiting on information from them in terms of, you know, what type of compensation, or dollars would be provided in terms of what the replacement would look like
Yeah.
and, that sort of thing. So I don't think there's any need for action, at least from what I understood by the board, at this meeting. But we did wanna bring it to your attention that, there's been a new development since last meeting, and as Pat explained.
I don't know how wide this space is. I guess my question is, there's nothing that like says you can't plant a tree of any size in that space?
It's going to get skinnier, it looks like, substantial,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
so they have to plant something back. I mean, they're gonna plant a new tree there.
It's not my, yeah, even originally when the landowners or whoever were the owners of this building put these trees in.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
It's not a very wide spot.
Depending on when they did, so now the city has had an arborist that goes back and forth, do they currently have an arborist?
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's bad street trees like all over the city.
I know,
Too
in
big.
front of our office. or-
Yeah, you do, some bad street
Yeah.
trees. But I do think we can make sure an appropriate street tree is put in, and usually, that was my point about 3 foot
Right,
width. That's
right.
usually like your standard, like you wouldn't plant a tree and have it survive if it was less than 3 foot wide. And it would have to be the appropriate tree.
Okay, well, you just wanted to make us aware, there's nothing that we need to do at this point
No.
from a new business standpoint.
Would like a recommendation, I mean, you know, if you guys can make, they do have to start their work. I think they're starting in December, if I'm not mistaken. That's what the
They
word
need
said.
to get us information then.
So I told her, you know, I'd present the photos to the board and see how they felt about them taking them down and replanting new trees. But
I think before they replant new trees, we'd like to see what they're gonna
what they
replant.
like, the new,
Right.
yeah, I think it's similar or the same particular type of tree. I don't know what type of tree that is that a maple? I'm not sure.
Yeah, looks like a maple.
Some sort, it looks like a maple to me.
Movement, I'm phatic acid tree.
People would be bush. When the
I-
leaves are turned, I might have to back down.
It looks like a maple.
But yeah, I think the information about what they're gonna replace, and I'd be curious what their dollar amount is too, cause I mean, one thing that I've definitely seen is the cost of trees has gone up this
Right.
year.
Well, it's no cost to us.
But I know, but if they
They're
gave,
replanting.
if they gave, to Mark's point, if they gave just money as opposed to trees, we wanna know what tree or what the compensation looks like as far as value.
Sure, I mean, they should have to restore if they're gonna
Right.
take the trees out, they should have to restore the property.
No, I don't think
Yeah,
the same
on
I mean, if
their
it's the
time.
same type of tree,
Right.
I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying it's a problem if it's the same type?
Yeah,
I would
Yeah.
think
it's
so.
just not
It'd
gonna be
the same
appropriate.
So it's a small one,
Yeah,
like a red
Yeah, it'd have to
bud,
be
like a
small.
red bud or something?
Right, it's gonna have to be smaller to fit in the smaller space
Yeah.
that they're gonna have. But we don't want to twig.
We need all the answers, we need all the answers.
Right.
Right.
I'm talking to us about trees.
Arborvitae.
There's nothing we can do until we have it all,
Steve.
what their plan is.
What do you need, George?
I would just say to give me authorization to make a decision on this, if it's A, B, or C, whatever that would be. Cause I don't want her to email me and say, we need a decision today, and we don't have a board meeting until December. I'm gonna be calling you guys.
And
"Hey,
Eric
we
will
need a
be
decision."
coming back telling us what kind of trees.
I think I'd be looking, what do you do with the wood? I mean, a lot of times these are sighting issues when you're planting a tree, they impair vision.
Luckily, these are existing ones and they're actually adjacent to a building, so it's not a site distance issue.
CBD trees, can you do that? They're gorgeous.
Yes.
Well,
Let's pave it.
We do that, motion to give me authorization to make the decision on what type of tree is to be replanted once they remove the 8 trees that are existing. And I would recommend like a red bud or something that doesn't grow high, but more out, colorful.
I mean, I think certainly a motion, you know, approving the removal, I realize that you don't have the replacement plan in place yet, but you do have some idea of what you're gonna have if all they do is trim, which is, you know, a stub
Right.
that
Yeah.
looks
I don't
like
think
it
anyone's
had,
opposed to removing
you know,
them, right?
Yeah.
everything chopped off, so I think for now, at least having authorization to say, yes, you can, back to Allison at PPL, yes, you can remove the trees, but we, you know, we would, then be able to work out with them, what the next step is. If that makes sense.
I think that's yeah.
alright, so I'll look for a motion to approve on this 83 tree removal project. A motion to approve removal of trees, with a further conversation on replacements.
Jordan, I do have current pricing and current like street trees that I can provide, just like a palette that would be appropriate for that stuff, for that wood.
Thank you.
At PPL's cost, both
Right.
removal and replacement.
Right, I just have like current data on, like we planted our street trees yesterday, so very,
Very
Very
fresh
current.
call.
very current.
Current call.
Alright, so I'll look for a motion. Mr. Schofield,
In second.
seconded by Ms. Wolfbach. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed likewise. The ayes have it, motion carries. Old business. Solar project update.
No update, gonna delay the tour until the springtime, so it's a little bit warmer for you guys.
Appreciate that.
Not a problem. So, probably April, May.
Gaming program update.
Just finished up 5 days from 3 to 10 p.m. with 125 applications that were submitted for over, well, exactly not 11,996,648 worth of requests. We had 2 applications that were denied due to being late for the city of Harrisburg. Their application as well as Susquehanna Greenbelt, which the city had their application as well. They were late, so they were denied.
The Susquehanna Greenbelt being the bicycling Greenbelt?
Yes. They get them into the next day after the deadline came. So, there was nothing we could do. Strict regulations on deadlines, and, they, contacted me, wanted some relief, but not authorized.
What was the city of Harrisburg?
Police and fire, whatever they submitted, and, some renovations to the building, I think.
The building, yeah, behind the, like, behind, above the police department there, you know,
Behind our old building?
the city municipal building, with the part that goes around.
They email it or drop off hard copy?
They, like I said, they submitted it the next day.
They have to be received or postmarked, they can be postmarked on the date
Gotcha.
that they're due. Anything that comes in after, it's been, you know, consistently applied and
Yeah.
is explained to all, potential applicants, that, there's really only one way to not be considered, and that's to miss the deadline.
But I guess there might be multiple ways of getting information.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can hand deliver it, or it can just be postmarked, on that date.
Okay.
Okay. Infrastructure bank.
I don't think there's any, pending activity.
All right, any other old business? Correspondence and miscellaneous items. Nothing. Anything not done? Any further board comments? Any further public comments? Give you another-
No, I think I had a nice meeting, man. Good bonding with you.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn the Dauphin County Industrial Development Authority meeting at 12:34.
So moved.
Ms. Fox? Ms. O'Hara?
That's
All in favor of the motion to adjourn, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, the ayes have it, and at 12:34
I'm sorry.
we are adjourned.
Going to the next one now,
What's the next one?
EDC,
Can't leave you there.
That's the EDC.
Economic Development Corporation.
Nah, I gotta get out of there.
What?
Oh, we have a satanic cult in the